Ian.
Thank you, Dido. Pleasure to be here as a substantive chief executive of NHS Improvement to give a short report on some of the experiences gained over what have been a very interesting few weeks since the 4th of December. Picking up on what Dido says, it would have been completely wrong for me not to highlight the very significant efforts of NHS staff to respond to the winter pressures that the service has been facing pretty much all of the time that I've been in post. I think it's worth mentioning just a few points. We'll have a proper discussion on winter when we get into the agenda, but I think clearly we went into the winter better planned than we have previously been. Nonetheless, the situation has been, by any measure, extremely challenging. So I think in December we saw 5.9% more emergency-related patients admitted than the previous December. We saw A&E attendances up, and we saw demand for NHS 111 up 13% year on year. So that is a significant demand on the service. In addition to that, people around the table will understand that we've seen that flu has been a significant issue, with flu rates 3 times higher this year than last. Arguably, this is the most likely to be the most significant flu season since 2010-2011. So I think on the demand side, significant pressures on the NHS. I think I would just highlight, though, that despite that, the NHS has actually seen more patients within 4 hours, both in the month of December and in the year-to-date perspective. So I think the planning paid off as regards that. But clearly the service has been under significant pressure. As evidence of that pressure, the National Emergency Pressures Panel, it's a clinical panel on which Kathy, as our medical director, sits, met twice over the holiday period. First on the 20th of December, where it agreed that in the interest of patient safety, there'd be a planned postponement of non-urgent elective procedures. And then subsequently on the 2nd of January, when the panel noted the ongoing pressure on the service and decided to extend the advice to cover the period till the end of this month. So I think clearly there's been an injection of finance and a package of around 358 million into the NHS to help with the cost of winter. I think it is also worth noting, though, that in addition to that, we will see the results of winter in expenditure terms when we get the month 9 numbers in. The month 9 numbers are being submitted to us today from providers up and down the country. So it would be wrong of me to speculate, but clearly we will need to see if, as I expect may be the case, there is a material financial impact upon providers from the exceptional work that they've been doing this winter, and we will need to take stock of that when those numbers come in, given that the financial position of the NHS provider sector remains where it was. So that will need to be assessed in that context. I just want to finish this bit about winter with emphasising my personal thanks, I think, to NHS staff. There's no question that despite the pressure, as you go around and talk to NHS staff, the NHS has delivered to its absolute best for patients going through the system, and staff have certainly gone the extra mile. I would also want to highlight, I think, the work done by NHS Improvement staff to support the front line. That's been extensive across the holiday period as well. A couple of other things to highlight aside from winter. So delighted to be able to report that West Hertfordshire Hospitals NHS Trust exited special measures. That is a real achievement. While I think they probably would accept, like every trust, there's more to do, and they have nonetheless demonstrated significant improvement, and to exit special measures is a real achievement. So that's a reflection of the improvements in quality at that important provider. Against that, very early on in my tenure, we saw a very significant deterioration at King's College Hospital, with a forecast that went out to a deficit of 92 million, making it one of the absolute worst in the NHS. And as a result of that, we had to take regulatory action, including putting the trust into financial special measures. So some time ago now, but a significant issue, and we're working very hard now to support the trust to get onto an improvement trajectory. But I think certainly worth reporting that to the board. Just a couple of other things before I close. I hope and expect that NHS Improvement, working jointly with NHS England, will shortly be able to issue planning guidance to the NHS for 18-19. We know there's been an injection from the government of additional £1.6 billion, and the guidance that we hope to get out in the near future will provide the basis on which that should be spent as the basis of planning for next year. And finally then from me, just picking up again on the point about our own organisational development and the importance of joint working with NHS England. So you'll see in my report that I commit to us working more effectively and more closely with NHS England. I think that is absolutely necessary as we work in increasingly integrated healthcare systems, as well as with individual organisations up and down the country. And so I think I'm sure I speak for NHS England as well in saying that we have more to do to join ourselves up at regional levels and potentially at national levels as well. And so I think looking forward to continuing those conversations and bringing proposals back to the board at a future date, in the not too distant future, to describe how we might work to give more seamless support to the NHS. In addition to that, I think it's no surprise to say that our own staff survey suggests that we have more work to do internally to be really clear about how we give maximum support to the NHS and how we need to be organised ourselves in terms of our own operating model, clarity on our own purpose, given that we have regulatory, performance management and improvement functions and the balance of those, and the business model that we have to support them. And so I will again be bringing further proposals back as we look at that as a matter of some urgency as well. The view to both looking at our own internal operations, but doing that very much jointly with NHS England, where we have to work together to give coherence to the NHS. So all in all, Chairman, I think I can summarise to say it's been a busy few weeks, and I look forward to continuing the conversation in the forthcoming weeks, months and years.
Questions, comments for Ian?
I do have some in winter, but I'll hold the winter ones till we get on to winter, I think, rather than doing them on here. I just got the only question on the organisational development side, and I'm pleased about the simplification of approach. I'm pleased about the new approach to trying to deal with the handful of the organisations we deal with an awful lot of actually trying to get a single point of contact and team behind it. And I guess my only question was, we do talk about evaluating that, and I just wondered how we'll evaluate it and to what extent we're looking to survey the organisations we deal with to sort of baseline where we are now with those and measure the extent to which, from their point of view, the interaction improves as a result of this work.
So I think we've got sufficient anecdotal information. I wouldn't say it was a formal baseline to suggest that the organisations that we deal most frequently with often find different bits of our organisation engaging with them in a sequential fashion, and that there is a mutual desire for a more focused conversation that brings all our functions, whether they are improvement related, efficiency related, or on occasions regulatory, is to be part of a single conversation alongside the discussions we have with them around quality. So I think the ask is there, and I think it's been well received by the organisations we're working with. And clearly this is a trial, and at the end of the financial year we will take stock in conjunction with the organisations concerned. But I think the sense I would have, without prejudging that, is that that's already streamlining the conversation that we have with these organisations that are a matter of interest for our organisation in all its various forms. So I think it's too early to say how we would roll that out, but I think we should take stock of that at the end of the year and see if it is the basis for a broader approach as part of our business model, so we streamline those conversations.
I'd just commend actually having a reasonably formal evaluation approach to it. Some of these initiatives we tend to evaluate them after the event without actually setting up the process to measure how we're going to do it. And I think there has been a number of cases when we've moved quite quickly into approaches where then you haven't really got a formal evaluation mechanism. It can be very light touch, but maybe to get Ben's team just to set up, this is what the criteria is.
I think it's a fair suggestion. To be fair, we have been moving fast on this, but let's take that away and see if we can do that.
Cathy?
Just to reassure you, so absolutely in that space, and we've had some discussions and already commenced discussions with Ben's team about exactly doing something that, and we recognise that we need to look at that from the internal perspective and from the trust perspective. So the detail of it not fleshed out as you imply, but we absolutely know that's a really important part of this programme.
Other comments or questions for Ian?